Right, so I'm going to try something new that for once. I'm going to go through your replay live and kind of, you know, point out the things that seem off to me or where I think you could have done something differently to improve your chances at winning. Well, I mean, you won the game, but to improve your chances at winning more convincingly. So this is my first run through as well. I didn't want to. I want to try doing this, like kind of, sort of, as a first run through, and then if I at a later time decide that, and then at a later time I'd like to do another replay where I go through the replay first and then I point out the things that I kind of see. But I wanted to kind of get an idea of how well I can point these things out on my first run through. So, all right, let's jump in. So kick off. Let's see what you do. So you go for boost. That's pretty standard. I think right there, you could have. I think what happened is you were hesitating because he was so close to the ball. But I think if he touched the ball here, you wouldn't be in that bad a position because your teammate is probably back in time to make a save. And at this point in the game, unless you've been playing with this guy previously, I don't think you have any reason to not trust him to be there on time. So that's the thing you could have done. You could have gotten a better quality touch here, which, like, I think this is going to result into loss of possession, and now it's a 1v2. That's really tough to defend for your teammate, but it does go well. But this goal, like, if we just look back at this, like when you were here, like this turn is a bit ball chasey. You would much rather be in goal so that this can't happen, right? If you were in goal here, this is an easy block, or you just charge out at the ball and you both of them are suddenly overcommitted, right? So instead of turning there towards the ball, I'd like calm down, go back to net and see if you can do anything there. And then this goal just doesn't happen. That's probably the biggest benefit. Alright. Actually like that kickoff a lot, but this follow-up, I don't think you can compete. Like, if you're competing with this guy, you're not going to compete and get a good touch on the ball with only 12 boosts, because it looked like you only had 12. So you're much better off just like see if you can get a hit, but don't do this where you're taking yourself out of the play longer, right? And now you're in a kind of awkward defensive spot. Right here, I think you could have definitely taken the ball, especially if you see warped. He's like as soon as this ball pops up, you can see that he's in kind of an awkward position because he's not really facing the ball, so he'd have to turn, then go up, and then still hit the ball in a good way to get some power on this. I feel like you could have like definitely driven up here and contested. It seems like a bit of hesitation here that could, at least it cost you like a shot on target. And then here as well, also the hesitation of who's going for the ball, right? After you miss this first touch, right here, that's the moment where you let your teammate come in and let him do his thing, right? And here it would be nice if you rotated back to net in case he loses the ball, but that's not necessarily what you need to do, but that's what I would do. So this is a good one. This is 100% a shot, right? Right here, I would always take a shot. Why? Because your teammate is in front of you, and so he should be ready here to like basically deal with any form of pass / rebound attempt, right? You can very easily take a shot at net here, and if it hits the backboard or the sidewall, he can take a follow-up shot, and then you can come in and take a follow-up shot, right? This is a very easy transition into offense, but then you kind of right here, you kind of over boost. You don't really predict the wall that well. And a good way I've found to deal with the Starbase Arc walls is that it's better to kind of under predict, if you will. So like this ball could go straight into the center, or it could stick close to the wall. You're almost always going to get a good hit if you stay a bit closer to the wall, because if you predict it to go in field, right, when he's just turned back like this, because he didn't really have a good follow-up hit, that's usually the case after you make a wall pass, it's better to stay a bit close to the wall and then adjust your angle through air rolling, or just in general adjusting your angle on the fly, than it is to kind of over predict it and end up in this position where you take a really bad first touch and now all of a sudden you're scrambling in midfield again and you lose possession right here. So I'd say personally, for Starbase, if Starbase is like giving you trouble, and that's something that I struggled with personally when I was trying to push for Grand Champ, is that the bounces can be super weird sometimes, but the best thing you can do is to just, instead of like focusing on reading the bounce, is making sure you're in a position where if the bounce is kind of like is more in field than you expect it to be, that you can still kind of respond and at least force, like it might not be a good 50-50, but at least force a 50-50, right? So that you don't just get taken out of the play, or take a really bad first touch that results in a loss of possession. That's my kind of tip for Starbase. So if you're struggling with that, then try and rely on prediction a bit less until you get the bounces down, and then once you do get the bounces down, that's when I would turn it up a bit more. So this is good. I actually really like how you're hovering here, because it was, to me, this seemed like a very close 50-50, like either one of them could get this, and then you get the complete dunk. Yeah, that's just something that you kind of need to. So right here, this is actually something that I see a lot in the lower star ranks, and even in like lower ranks than that, is this is kind of hovering in a bad position, right? So this is one of those moments where either your teammate scores it immediately, or you kind of don't get a goal, right? So it's better, I think this flip in particular, that one, is probably a mistake, and I'd much rather see you just drive up instead of flip, because that would result in you being in a bit more midfield, and that means that you can deny this one, right? Because now you're suddenly, all of a sudden, you have to get back into a defensive position and then develop a play again from that. Whereas you'd much rather just deny the clear and then, you know, set up a play from there. Basically, it's you giving them a moment of kind of time and space to recollect themselves and grab boost and get back on defense. Whereas if you had been a bit more midfield, you could have denied their clear, and then you would have had more pressure. And that's kind of the thing. You kind of want to be... I mean, this was good because in this scenario, you were able to take one of the defenders out of the play and then set up a shot, which turned out into a goal. And that's kind of what you want to do, is you want to create a 2v1 situation where you have the boost advantage and the... basically you have a teammate with you that can help you, you know, it can bump the goalie, whatever, but you want to be in 2v1 scenarios. So this was a good you made a good, like, you made good use of the situation, but I do feel that you could have put on more pressure, like you could have kept pressure for longer, and that generally at these ranks a lot of people will just screw up just from that. Just from the sheer pressure that you put out on them. So this is really interesting. Okay, so your teammate has decided to stay in goal, which is really, really bad. And then I think as you see this, like when you turn around, you should have seen him, and immediately you should have thought, okay, I need to go for the ball, because you can't just let them set up a pass like this. You actually have to pressure this ball, and then luckily you guys get a good challenge because your opponents fuck up. But I do feel like that should be a goal, like 80% of the time against good players. Oh, that's a really unfortunate save. See what happened here. So this, I don't think you should leave. I think you should at least have driven up the wall here and made the shot harder, because I think right here you're kind of out of boost, or at least you're not in a very good spot to go to net, right? Because if you go to net, then you still have to turn around, and you know, just going to be slow. It's going to be a slow retreat. So I think right here, what you should have done is you should have put pressure on the ball, driven up the wall, seen if you can maybe make a touch, even if you don't have that much boost. Because now what happens is aerial, your teammate's out of position, and he own goals, right? I think you could have prevented that had you gone up in any... like, if you had just touched the ball, it would have been really hard for your teammate, for your opponents to score here. So that's... I think you could work on that, is when you're not going to be able to defend in time, right, do your defending by pressuring the ball and by making sure that a shot is either some incredible angle or really easy to save for your teammate. That's my advice on these kinds of situations. I mean, nothing, like, this is only one goal down and you have plenty of time, so I don't think it's that bad, or like you're in that bad of a spot, but you could have definitely prevented at least one of those goals. No, this is just an easy walk-in. That's the easiest goal of your life. Ooh, I don't really like that kickoff. You should definitely have flipped. As well as that aerial. Right here, you can tell that you're a bit panicked, right? Because you just seen your teammate whiff, and then you kind of do a really bad approach. Like right here, you should have been so much more in goal. You know that the other guy, the other blue team member, is on the other side of the field because you just saw him flip past you, and you can actually see that your opponent is also driving away from the ball. So you had time, and that by doing this, your teammate needs to come in. So in these situations, and that goes for pretty much every defensive situation, try not to panic and like get into a good defensive position. Getting into a good defensive position is so much more important than it is to kind of than it is to be there quick. Usually at higher levels it also matters that you're there quick, but you're not at that level yet, and when you get to that point, you'll know, and you'll like, this will all be so kind of ingrained into your play that you don't really have to think about it. You'll naturally drive into goal. That's a general tip that I would give you, is just don't be afraid to defend from goal. To actually sit in net, not in front of it, not slightly in front of it, just like in net. Don't be afraid to do that. So that's a bit pretty horrible pass. That's also a pretty horrible touch. And then here suddenly is a good touch. So you wait. That's, yeah. Okay, so in these kinds of situations where your teammate's just kind of scrambling to make a pass happen, and you have to wait on a touch like this, I would argue that you shouldn't even be here in the first place. Kind of just let them sort this out, right? I always view bad touches and bad passes as basically you just lost possession. And when you lose possession, that's kind of when you need to go into a more defensive position, right? Right here, you're in a pretty offensive position. You're much more suited towards attacking the ball than you are denying a clear. So if you had been where the blue team member, this guy is, right, instead, or even closer to the wall, you would have had a much easier clear here, especially given the way he was going to shoot. Right there, you just get Oh, my bad. Then you just get demoed. And now your play just completely falls apart. Right, so that's... You could have been a bit more proactive in your positioning here. And your teammate is definitely, like... Your teammate is definitely, like, getting good challenges in. I don't think he's that untrustworthy up until this point. Like, he might not be the fastest, but he's definitely been, you know, when he's been there when he needs to be. Even though he had a couple low quality passes. This is a good example, by the way, of over, like, when you cheat up here and you realize that you're not going to get to the ball because it's going to bounce weird. Here, I think you should have taken that mid boost instead of the back boost, because you can see that the ball is, like, in the middle of nowhere. No one's there to contest, right? You just used all your boost. Now you're boostless, and you have to go for this mid boost and you just get taken out of the play. And now all of a sudden your teammate is in a 1v2, and that could have easily been a goal, right? So try to be a bit more proactive. Like, be forward. Don't be afraid to, like, commit to the play and get taken out of it, because right now what you're doing is you're staying back and you're never learning when it's time for you to aggress on the ball. You're being very, very passive, and by being this passive, you're basically giving up a lot of opportunities, right? So had you been on that ball, had you, like, taken the mid boost and then driven up the wall and then set up a pass, right, you would have had possession. Now you're defending. Like, you have to defend to get back on offense, and that's not what you want to do. You want to constantly be kind of taking, kind of exchanging possession. Ideally, you'd have possession all the time, but you want to be exchanging possession with your teammates, with your opponents a lot. Like, you're basically fighting over who gets the ball, and then when you get the ball, like, who can keep it on your opponent's half for the longest time, basically. And by positioning yourself so passively, you're basically giving up possession a lot more. So basically, let's say normally you would be on the ball half the time, right? So that's 2 minutes and 30 seconds, right? By being this passive, you're on the ball, say, 2 minutes to 1.5 minutes. And that just means that in those 2.5 to 1, like, in those 2 to 1.5 minutes, you have to make pretty much every moment count, because you don't get as much time on the ball. And that's an issue, right? You want to have the ball as much as possible. So really, 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 like, try and work on this passive, like, don't wait things out. Be aggressive, like, be more forward on the ball, right? That doesn't mean, like, go blindly into everything, but that does mean position yourself in a way that allows you to take advantage of mistakes by your opponents, and that's something that you're currently not doing. Like, right here as well, this boost pickup is really passive to me, because you can see right here that the mid boost, I don't know if my cursor will show up if I, yeah, this one, I don't know if you can see that, the mid boost kind of on the left side of your screen is up, and I don't think it's at all bad to pick that one, rather than the one that you pick up here, which is the back boost, right? And that's just because you don't, like, in hindsight, yeah, that might have been a bad pickup, right? But it could have been a bad pickup. Like, people respond differently to where they see you are, but I don't think, like, I think the benefits in this case of being more proactive and having a more proactive positioning on the field is better than the possible risk of a shot, which, even if they take a shot, there's a really good chance that if you power slide correctly and you recover from that boost pickup correctly, that there's a very small chance that that power shot will actually go in, and it'll have to be like a serious boomer. So this is just, like, challenging, right? This is a good touch. Here you're in a really awkward spot, and not only do you have to, like, recover from this aerial or this shot, but you also have to read the bounce and make sure that you're there on time. So when you see this, oh, my bad. When you see this, really should not, like right here, this jump I feel is a mistake, because you're never going to get to the ball before them, right? They've already read the bounce. Like, they didn't have to do all the recovery, they didn't have to build up their momentum anymore, they could just transition easily. So this, when you do this, it's just you taking yourself out of the play, whereas instead you could have been on the ball and you could have been pressuring it, right? You could have been if you faked the challenge, you could have been on the ball. You could have made it hard for them to get the ball to your side, and then maybe even denied it right here, and then that would have made it so much easier for your teammate to at some point just come in and take the ball away. So here, this is a pretty classic one. You see right here that your teammate hit the ball and that he's very clearly going to hit the ball again. So after this flip, the first thing you should do is power slide and turn around immediately. Like, that's probably the biggest thing that you should have been doing here. And then clear gets denied, and you deny their clear again, etc, etc. Here, this is a bit of hesitation, I feel. You could have gotten this for sure if you had read the bounce. Again, when you don't read the bounce, stay a bit more back. When you don't know exactly how it's going to bounce, stay a bit more back, right? Being a bit more safe of a position. Right here, you were very forward, and as a result, you lose the ball and you get not really taken out of the play, but you do, like, it was a bit, here as well. More hesitation. You pop it and then you wait. There's like a good, I don't know, like 1/3 of a second. You knew what this touch was going to do as soon as you, or you should have. If you didn't know that this touch was going to go this way, then that's a mistake in and of itself. You should know how your car interacts with the ball in this situation. But when you knew that this ball was going to go up, you should have been up immediately. Like, you should never be beaten to a ball that your opponent has to read before you do. Especially because you have a plan. You should have a plan. So here, I don't actually like how long you've turned off ball cam, but that's just, turning off ball cam usually is a sign of, for too long, is usually a sign of, I don't think I'll be in the play, and that's bad because anything could happen that will suddenly put you in a really good position to either score or save. So I think, especially for boost, what I do is I make sure that I'm aligned with the boost canister, and then I will turn it back on again. I actually turn off ball cam a lot, on and off a lot. Same thing for the scoreboard. I tap that a lot because it's just APM kind of that I'm not using. But don't turn it off for extended periods, right? Because not knowing what's going on the pitch is probably the worst mistake you can make, because there's so much information you need to process for your position on the field. So don't try not to turn it off for longer than 2 seconds. This is a good example of going for the same ball as your teammate. Right here, when you see him cheating in front of you, you should assume that he's gonna go. Right, because he's closer to the ball. So you guys both going here doesn't really do anything, and then you turning back here kind of makes it harder for him. Let's see. Yeah. So had you stayed center here, right, and had you driven a bit more to the center, he could have passed it to you here, and you could have taken a shot, and that would be a guaranteed goal. Right now, he has to set up a slow play, which doesn't result in a goal. So be mindful of those things. Like, when you're on the ball, and I'll link you another a video. I think I linked it to you on the previous replay review as well. But I feel like you're definitely off with your positioning at times. Like, you're not being aggressive. That's the first one. You're not being passive. You're being very passive, and you're being very hesitant. But you're also not, when you're not being aggressive with your positioning, you're limiting your teammates' options. In this situation, being aggressive was correct because both of the one of your opponents was out of the play because he was in your goal, and the other one was just scrambling to return. So had you taken a decently powerful shot on net, you probably would have had a goal here. So that's something to keep in mind. Like, be actively thinking about how can I make the most of my positioning and how can I set up the best plays with my positioning. So here I think you're also a bit far away, right? After you recover from this and you see this flip again, you're a bit too eager to get out, and you should be a bit more proactive. So right here, had you been closer, like you could have gotten away with it, right? Because unless he takes a really powerful shot on your net, on target, like, there's no way that you're gonna actually gonna get, scored on. So you could have been a bit more forward. So here, this is again that classic hesitation, right? So here, after you don't see him jump immediately, you could have gone for this aerial. Okay, so you don't, right? Then you pick up a boost pad, which is odd, right? Why would you spend this much boost, flip for just a boost pad, and then not retreat immediately to go, right? So this to me, this play signals hesitation and that you don't really have a good idea of how to act and position on defense, right? Because here you're just giving them a lot of space. Then he takes this shot, right? Your teammate has to jump for this, and basically you just get bumped out of goal, and now you've been useless for like the past 5 or so seconds, and you don't really have a way back in, right? So now you're gonna get a way back in because now your teammate, gets taken off the ball, and again you only get one touch. So really try and work. Again, it happens again here, right? When this is hit, this is your ball, right? You can get under this, because why is this your ball? Okay, that your teammate is in goal because you just saw him. You know that if there's someone going for this, which there is, then he'll be able to take a shot. That's what your teammate is for. You going here and then turning around made very little sense to me, right? Because you're basically saying I don't trust my teammate, which is a fair point. Like, I wouldn't trust anyone blindly at Shooting Star. I would be very critical of them and then decided if they're trustworthy. But by doing this, you're basically giving your opponents all the space in the world, and look how far away from the goal you are. Like, there's 2 people on your half from blue team, and there's 1 orange player. You're so far gone that if they play this correctly, you actually just get scored on, right? Now, luckily for you, their positioning was pretty poor, but please do try and keep that in mind, right? Don't this could be a goal had they gone up faster, but like, try and not to hesitate as much and be decisive on every action you take. Don't like hover in between plays, because if you do that, then you're just gonna, if you're hovering in between plays, you're gonna get beaten to the ball and or taken advantage of. So really, my advice to you is stop hesitating and don't be as passive. Overall, I think you played well. You capitalized on the opportunities that you got, but I definitely think that you could have prevented at least one of the goals, and you could have scored more of them had you been more aggressive. So a good way to practice this, to not hesitate, is to just go for everything. Don't be afraid to be called a ball chaser, because most people don't know what a ball chaser actually is. Ball chasers, being labeled a ball chaser means that you're going where the ball is rather than where the ball will be. So a good example of this is that goal the first goal that happened, which was the one. Actually, I think you could have prevented both goals. But the first one was the one where if you had rotated back to goal, instead of following the ball, the shot would have been an easy block, right? And you might even have resulted in a breakaway goal. So I think that it's definitely not a bad thing to be overly aggressive, if it's for the sake of learning. So my advice to you is to just try and go for everything, and then, you know, that's a good kind of way to do things. Is if you're overly aggressive, right? You can always scale things down, right? You can always be like, okay, yeah, no, this is not working. I'm toning it down a bit. But when you're being too passive, you can't just say, oh, I'll be a bit more aggressive, because it's such an opposite, right? From, like, passive play is not really a thing in higher level play, because you need to be aggressive, right? If you're not on the ball constantly, you're just gonna get 1v2'd. Your teammates just gonna get 1v2'd, right? And right at this current rank, that might not seem like such a big deal, because your opponents just aren't as good as they should be. So they, you know, if they're in a 2v1 situation, they don't properly know how to take advantage of it. But it's definitely like a theme in Shooting Star and All Star, where, like, taking someone out of the play is probably the easiest way to score. So really be mindful of, you know, how you deal with defensive situations, and how aggressive and, you know, how proactive you are on the pitch. Really, really, really big. Like, those are probably my two biggest issues for you right now, is that you're just being really, really passive, and you're hesitating so much that you are, I'd say on average you miss like 3 goal scoring opportunities because you're being passive, and or being hesitant in your games, like every game. I didn't count for this one, but there were definitely a couple moments where I was like, if you had just taken a shot here, you would have had an amazing chance at scoring a goal, especially since your opponents just aren't, you know, that solid yet. But overall, like, it was a good game. You did well winning this game and, like, holding on for 2.5 minutes. There were, like, I think, like, 2 decent, you know, decently butt clench moments, but other than that, there were no real scary moments. I felt like a lot of midfield contesting to me in this game, but overall you played well. But it's just that passiveness and that hesitancy that's just killing, like, so many of your opportunities that you could have acted on. So my advice to you is to just go into a game and, you know, don't be afraid to be really, 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 really aggressive, and then, you know, see what works. And when it doesn't work, you know, that's next time you'll know that that's not what you need to do, right? So yeah, that's I think that's all I had to say on this replay. I hope you find this helpful, and yeah, hope this helped. All right. Yeah, okay. All right.